Hello and welcome to this video where we are going to have a look at a build that is meant to be a complete campaign buster-upper and makes it easy. And we just finished campaign with the particular build, and I wouldn't recommend you do it unless you have run the campaign a couple of times or at least once and you have some sort of skill or knowledge of the game. And it's not really what I would suggest you is a leveling build, and you probably won't get through the campaign following the build guide as a new player, which is odd considering I just said I got through the campaign. We are level 64 and we'll go over the character and everything, but first, this is some of the things that the creator of the build said about his build, about people following other builds or having issues with his build or variations of it. So hopefully the volume's all right because it is from a recording. So let's just double check.
Sometimes, right? And it's just a very cool and fun experience.
Let's go back.
Other than that, every single boss, first try, just pull up, kill the boss in like, under a minute sometimes, right? And it's just a very cool and fun experience. Some of the mechanics are really awesome, the flavor is really awesome, but like they don't take that long to kill. And if they do, then your build probably sucks. Look up somebody else who's playing your class and try to figure out how to make your build better, because it's really just a build difference, right? They are bad at the game by saying, some like my character does 0 damage. If your character does 0 damage and you're struggling, you're bad at the game. Your build sucks. You're not using the right abilities, you're not using the right support gems, you're not crafting the gear properly, you're not taking advantage of the game systems because you suck at the game, which is okay. As many options and good experience so that you can go through the game very easily and experience what it's like when your build is actually decent at every stage of the game, right?
So that was the build creator talking about his own build, plus people having a problem with either, hopefully you can hear me now, I'll repeat that just in case. That was the build creator going on about either his build or people having a problem with the campaign, or people that were saying that his build is an outlier and doesn't actually perform the way it should due to mechanics or anything like that. Or people that had a problem with the fact that he was saying it's trivial, beat boss within a minute, 2 minutes, just power through the campaign, no issue, no nothing, just easy as. And this is me playing through the campaign. This is Cruel Act 1 to 3, different bosses and everything. And how I went using his build, except for a few changes, because there was no way I was completing the campaign with his actual build. I'll actually keep it on a smaller version, just over there, because I do want to show a couple of things. So they'll play and you can see that we're not deleting bosses like this build is meant to, apparently. You may notice that we have Wind Dancer and Time of Need up here. Now, Time of Need is a awesome spirit reserver. It does as it says up there, but it gives you back some health every, I think on base level it's like 11.5, gem level brings it down, but every like 11 seconds, but cleanses you. Considering the bosses, the phases or anything, it's a good thing just to have there running. And then Wind Dancer, I would recommend this on any boss that you are face to face. They're constantly in your face moving and trying to hit you, because if you follow the actual build, you probably won't get past Act 3 normal, because you won't get past Viper. If you get past Viper, it would be purely because you picked up awesome gear, weapon especially, or you got good RNG and she didn't constantly go into that phase where she's dropping fire and chaos and then the spears go across. You she actually stood there and tried to hit you. But I went full evasion. I followed the build strictly as it said up until Viper, banging my head up against the wall for many things because the damage wasn't there. Clear speed wasn't there. This build only comes into its own. You start feeling some power in Cruel Act 1. Doriani normal. If you know the mechanics, you can do that fairly easy as far as a boss fight. You won't be deleting him any real quick or anything. But Cruel Act 1 and then falls off again by Cruel Act 3 towards the end unless you get upgrades. Now, as you can see in the video, I'm doing different bosses. We are doing damage. We are getting it together. This is obviously Cruel Act 3 Val guy. And we know the mechanics because I've done the campaign for around 120 hours now. I've pretty much only been focused on the campaign, trying to figure out certain things. Mainly with the mercenary, different ways because it is weak early on. There is some bang your head against the wall with some of the skills. And it's not necessarily any build's fault, the early game. But this specifically, the Grenadier, from Act 2 onwards, is weak early. It's not if there was another way, I would say go level that and then swap to this by the end of campaign or in late game, end game. Once you hit maps, transition into it. But unfortunately, mercenary, it's like saying that you only got a amputation kit for a cut on your leg and you don't have anything else to fix it. Yes, amputating it will stop it bleeding and everything, but it's a little like there's nothing else, so it's a bit extreme saying it's awesome because it's not. The problem is that there's no specific thing you can actually do to make this better or easier for you apart from knowing the mechanics, knowing how to actually change things up if you're having issues. Viper here, if you don't know Viper, especially the spear things, I would just say roll towards wherever the spear things are coming from when it does the one end to the other, and you either will barely get hit or you won't get hit. Just keep rolling back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. And if you can time the roll as they're coming towards you, roll towards where the direction that's coming at you, and you'll barely get hit or just get a little damage. Do take that in mind with that Viper fight. That does save you a lot of health and maybe get one shot if you're unlucky. Now, I wouldn't go armor evasion. I'd go straight evasion and just base your ability to dodge mechanics and the melee guys to be able to miss you. I think for the most part I was up around that 55-60% of evasion pretty much the whole time because I was evasion based plus the Wind Dancer. So we went full evasion, which was off script. It wasn't on the actual build. That was something I chose to do because I'd run the campaign enough. I know which bosses you need to dodge their mechanics or which bosses you need to actually have some sort of way to mitigate their damage. And evasion is the easiest to get with this character, especially at the levels you need to at least get through the campaign with the evasion level that you can get. Armor, it's a little more difficult, and we're not face tanking nothing. We're trying to move around and evade everything. So you can see with the video, Doriani, yes, we're doing damage, but no, we're not destroying him. Especially not in 1 minute or whatever. 1-2 minutes. Now we'll look at the passive tree. we took this and this, which is part of the build plan. The first nodes that you rush for is Ricochet, and then once you become a Grenader and got the currency, you then take them down and then go through Area of Effect. So this is until end of Act 2, Act 3, depending on how you're going. Come straight down here, then we head up and into the volatile grenades, and then we come down here and get repeating explosives, and then you take armor if you need to, but you're told to go for these two for a high speciality. So pretty much we're taking all the sort of damage that we can do, and very early we are peaked at our damage for what we can access early on the tree. So pretty much at the end of let's say end of Act 3, early Cruel Act 1, we have taken pretty much all the damage, straight grenade damage that we can. We then try to get some Area of Effect and damage, and then also some Fire Pen and that to do some extra damage. This he actually added whilst I was leveling this. He updated the level guide. He didn't actually have this originally because obviously people were complaining that it didn't do enough damage to the actual bosses and rares. So he obviously added that as a extra thing because that wasn't there. I'll show the build plan in a minute. But up here is attack speed and a little more Area of Effect damage. But evasion, and this is an important one to get. Evasion as extra armor. If you go full evasion like I did, you get 8% evasion rating as extra armor, which means all evasion. That's a higher number than you'll get if you go armor evasion or just some armor, some evasion, some armor evasion. If you just try to get all evasion gear, you'll get a higher number. This is just attack speed and some blinding. The next path that is pointed is to come all the way up here, taking this movement speed and skill speed, coming across here, and then taking some nodes along here. I'm pretty sure it used to have this movement speed, but he took it out of the leveling guide. Another one is to take the pen here. So you either come up here, or if you wanted some extra attribute nodes, you could probably come across there, down here, and pick up a little bit more damage. And attributes, because it is a heavy attribute requirement, you constantly got to look at what is coming with the levels. Okay, what is going to be the highest? Dex is getting a bit out of control, really. This is purely me being stuck with this. I got this out of Ultimatum Second Ancestry. So that was the first time I think I've ever got anything useful out of Ultimatum. So that was cool. But yeah, the 88 Dex, that's an old chestplate. That's evading, so it's a little less. 78 Dex. I took that because of the res. Prioritized movement speed on my boot, so I didn't change them unless the next pair had movement speed. And as you can see, got res, got some max life here, because this is actually from Viper in normal 3. I've had this plate that long, because I put 25% life in as many things as I had the orbs. If we have a look at the gear I got from these things, I used as many as I had to put in the gear, put in this for the damage. What I actually completed most of the campaign with was this weapon with a 25% extra damage. 20% equals 40%. And as you can see, add that in as well. Now, one good thing I got was 24 Exiles. So I can go shopping on the currency exchange or trade site. And gems we got, since we're only using a couple of skills, because we're using gas grenade, explosive grenade, and explosive shot with oil grenades, pretty much just for bosses or tanky rares. We actually, if we have a look, ended up with a lot of extra gems. So we could either use them to try to Val Orb into an extra socket or something, or keep them for another character, so we got plenty of gems to try around, or re-rolls or anything like that. So that was, it's kind of cool. These is our first two, but as you can see, we weren't unlucky. We got our currency, we got everything. We used some lesser orbs and stuff to actually get our stuff up. And Herald of Ash I stopped using with Viper, never put it on again, and swapped to Time of Need. And then once I beat the Bog Witch for the second time, I added Vitality and Clarity, and then Wind Dancer, which gives us 16% more evasion per stage, and we pretty much keep 3 stages up most of the time. So that increases our evasion quite high, 64%. And the armor is just pretty much a little tiny bit of what we got on our actual gear, and most of it's the 8% of evasion. But as you can see, we're not when 25, 11, 24, 10. I am 64. I think if we have a look at the maps, does it say area level? I think the area level is like 67 or something. So we're quite under leveled. So it's not like I over leveled and still struggled. Or once it came online, Cruel Act 1 to Cruel Act 2 was fairly good at clearing. Bosses were still more me than the build. I'm not saying I'm totally skilled, but I have run the campaign a fair few times now. First the bosses, fair few times with good and bad builds. With the bad builds, obviously you got to face them more because obviously you're doing it a lot more. But yeah, 120 hours of campaign got me through this, not the build. If you tried it and you followed the build, and I'll bring up the actual build now. If we have a look at this. Now, hopefully you can see it all. I'll move my face. If I can grab me, I'll put me over there. So as you can see, great clear, high damage, satisfying playstyle. Requires good aim, slow start, requires learning boss mechanics for pinnacle bosses. That's endgame. But yeah, slow start, that's pretty much all builds, but it's not a slow start. It's a bang your head against the wall start. It's like a 2 out of 10 start wise. Requires good aim. I don't really, unless you completely don't know how to use a mouse or a controller or whatever, like you point and aim at target or near target or around target, like I don't really get that. So I don't know how you could have bad aim. It covers an like, yeah, satisfying play style, blows things up, but that's personal preference. High damage, no. Great clear, no. There are times where you can't even take care of white mobs, let alone some rares. You get a rare with an extra energy shield, you best just leave it and go. There are times where I've literally reset a zone because I can't get through this one rare. because it keeps getting in my way. So I reset the zone and rerun again because it had some things that I couldn't do, because this build at times can't even kill white tier monsters. Blue get tanky a lot with this build until it comes online in that Cruel Act 1. Then you're like, oh yeah, oh yeah. Then the bosses are still dodge mechanics, taking like a little while to actually take care of. And then it starts falling off again, and then you need whole new upgrades by the time you end Cruel Act 3. So, unless you get the gear by the end of Act 1 for the count, by the end of Act 2 for Mr. Lightning Bolt, by the end of Act 3 for Doriani's Gates, and then repeated again, you will struggle at any point that you don't get RNG Godness. If RNG Jesus ain't on your side, you will struggle until it is. Not saying I am overly skillful. My skill got me through the campaign more than this build did. Knowing how to fight these bosses and how to actually move around these bosses got me through the bosses. Knowing where and how to go in certain areas got me through the campaign. Knowing how to tweak the build away from trying to cop hits to make them not being able to hit you 60% of the time got me through to the end of Act 3. So it might just be RNG wasn't on my side and the bosses were doing all these different things, because sometimes the bosses would go special, 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 special. And since I knew what those moves were, I could position myself and actually get out of it. So if you try this build, do not use any gear from your stash or anything. Follow the build to the T. It has a specific how to actually play this build. Don't exalt nothing. Keep your exalts. This is the gem setup for the entire campaign. I obviously added more because I wanted to actually do some damage. Act 2, you swap over the grenades. You can try some of this if you want. But, as you can see, it comes up here, comes over there, comes up there. And yeah, you can have a look at the tree. It might change, so this is the tree as is now because they can update it and it's live. But yeah, how it plays, all this, you can follow that to the T, how it works. Follow it exactly how it says, and let me know if you get past Act 3. Or did you get past Act 3 because you know how to play the game? Because I don't think this build will probably clear with the right gear in endgame pretty easy. Because as long as you are doing damage and clearing area and moving, pretty much any build should be able to go boom to a bunch of trash and then just beat up the rest, depending on the modifiers. But if you follow it to the T, you might not even get to Cruel, let alone Doriani. And he's a little bit of fun. But let me know what you think. I do not recommend this for anyone that does not have knowledge of the boss mechanics for campaign bosses, not just like endgame. Campaign boss mechanics. Don't have some sort of skill in moving and shooting and doing all that, because you will get beat up a lot. People that do this, follow it to the T and let me know what you think. And I'll catch you next time. And possibly we'll see if this gets going in endgame. I do have some exhaust to spend if I wanted to go that way. But let me know. Hit all those buttons and I'll catch you next time. And goodbye. Pew, pew, pew. Bang, bang, bang. Boom, boom, bang.